And welcome to the Rob Call Bottom Up Show, available on Pacifica Radio Network, Progressive Radio Network, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and at opednews.com/podcasts. Big conversation is about the whistleblower right now, the anonymous whistleblower who reported on Trump's conversation with the president of Ukraine. And there's some interesting debate over what the story is with this guy. So I invited former CIA agent John Kiriakou, who I know because he's a whistleblower, and he blew the whistle on torture by the United States, which ended up putting him in jail, which is the way the United States treats a lot of people who cast light on the truth, who are whistleblowers. So it's great to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me, Rob. Good to see you again.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So there's an interesting collection of conversations around this. And one of the reasons I had you on was because some people are really criticizing this guy.
Yeah.
And I just would like your take on this whistleblower. Is he really a whistleblower if he's working for the CIA and whistleblowing on the president? People are saying that whistleblowers are people who blow the whistle on their employer.
You know, I'm of two minds on this whole issue. First of all, the guy does meet the definition of whistleblowing, which is bringing to light any evidence of waste, fraud, abuse, illegality, or threats to the public health or public safety. If you become aware of a violation of the law and you go to whomever, your chain of command, the inspector general, the congressional oversight committees, yes, that's the definition of whistleblowing. But we don't really know anything about this guy. And I'm not entirely convinced that it's one person. And I'll tell you why. In 1996, I was serving overseas, and I became aware of a very large but illegal campaign contribution to the Dole presidential campaign. And so I reported it. I reported it to the CIA Inspector General. They took the information, they did an investigation, they deemed it to be credible, and they sent it to the Federal Election Commission. End of story. That's a normal whistleblower disclosure. What we have here is a guy who became aware of the information. We're not really sure how. Now it appears to be secondhand, which is perfectly fine. He went through his chain of command. And then this Pandora's box opened, where from the chain of command, his immediate supervisors, it went to the attorneys at the general counsel, it went up through the leadership, it went to Gina Haspel, it went to the IG, it went to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, it seems, at every senior level of the CIA. And then it went to ODNI's Inspector General. The ODNI Inspector General, according to the law, is supposed to investigate it, and if he deems it truthful, he's supposed to send it to the oversight committees. That's what the law says, and that's how these things are investigated. But it wasn't sent to the oversight committees. It was sent to the Justice Department. Well, the law doesn't say investigate it and then send it to the Justice Department for political advice. And so, you know, on the one hand, this seems to be inappropriate behavior on the part of the president. On the other hand, I will not jump onto the CIA bandwagon and declare that it's the CIA that's the guardian of our democracy. We just don't have the facts. And I know what the CIA is like. They lied about torture. They lied about rendition. They lied about secret prisons. They lied about hacking into the Senate Intelligence Committee's computer system. They lie about everything. So why should we take their word for this?
We've had this conversation before. As a CIA agent, you're trained to lie.
Exactly. Everybody in the building is trained to lie. You get promoted based on how well you lie. So why in the world would I now believe them on this?
But you believe the whistleblower, but not them? Or
I'm not even saying that. I mean, if I take it at face value, I'm really conflicted about this. If I take it at face value, and I concede that there was an analyst who had served at the White House, at the National Security Council, and this analyst believes that he came across this information, okay, then I believe that he did the right thing by reporting it. But then I believe that the agency as an organization did exactly the wrong thing by taking over the whole process. You know, I don't care what the CIA says, that there's no such thing as a deep state, that they have no beef with Donald Trump. I don't believe any of that. You remember Chuck Schumer warned Donald Trump in 2017 of exactly this. You can't mess with the intelligence services because they have 9 ways from Sunday to ruin you. And I think that's what we're seeing here.
So it's now, I'm not clear that you said that you thought there may be more than one person behind this whistleblower.
Yeah. Yes. Let me explain that. I do not think this is one person. I think this is a group of people being fronted by one person. And it's because you read the whistleblower complaint and it does not read like a whistleblower complaint. I went through the same analytic training at the CIA that this guy went through. There's a certain writing style that the CIA beats into you. I still write in that style, even though I've been gone from the CIA for 15 years and I've been out of analysis for 22. I still write in that style because it is just beaten into you. This whistleblower report is not in the CIA writing style. This whistleblower report was written by a committee. And that leads me to believe that the lawyers had their chop on it, the CIA leadership had its chop on it, and that it was a group of analysts that each contributed to it. So I believe that there is not one whistleblower. I believe that there are many people who worked on this report.
Now, did you get a look at Caitlin Johnstone's article?
Yeah, I sure did.
What's your response to that? I mean, she basically is brutal. She basically says this guy's a CIA guy. CIA is horrible. All intelligence agencies and people are horrible. I mean, pretty much. And the other part of the article is we should be paying attention to the good whistleblowers like Chelsea Manning and Ed Snowden and those folks and you, but Bill Binning and Thomas Drake and Jessica Raditz.
Jesselyn Radick.
Radick, yeah. But she's brutal. I mean,
she was brutal. I tweeted the piece when it came out, just because she said in so few words what so many of us have thought. I had an experience at MSNBC 2 days ago it's just indicative of the situation that we face now, where I went on MSNBC onto the Ari Melber show. They never ran the clip. They ended up killing it, and they killed it for a reason. First of all, they introduced me as former CIA officer and convicted felon John Kiriakou. Not a word about whistleblowing. And it was utterly irrelevant that I'm a convicted felon when they invited me to come on and talk about the whistleblower. So what they wanted was for me to criticize the president and say how great the whistleblower is and how great the CIA was for going forward with this information. And I told them what I just told you, that we really don't know what the situation is yet. We're getting bits and pieces, some released from the White House, some released by the Oversight Committee, and some of it probably leaked to the press by the CIA. So I said, we really don't know if we should trust this whistleblower. That didn't fit into their narrative. Another complaint that I had was following my arrest. It took my lawyers, especially Jesselyn Radick, 1 year from January of 2012 to January of 2013 to get CNN and MSNBC to stop calling me CIA leaker John Kiriakou and to start calling me CIA whistleblower John Kiriakou. Now, CNN, ever since then, has called me a whistleblower, and Fox, for whatever reason, has always referred to me as a whistleblower. MSNBC still calls me a leaker. And on the Rachel Maddow show, she referred to me as John Kiriakou, who styles himself a whistleblower.
Ooh.
So we've got the mainstream networks here that have their own agenda and are trying to promote that agenda regardless of what the facts are and regardless of what the information is when the facts change.
Wow. Yeah, and then there's Adam Schiff. Now, the word is that this whistleblower spoke to Schiff before he reported.
Yeah, that's the latest.
What's your take on that?
The whistleblower is certainly entitled to do so. if you feel that you are not getting satisfaction in your home agency, the law permits you to go to the oversight committees. That's why the staff members have such high-level clearances. In the case of Tom Drake at NSA, Tom went to his inspector general, he went to the general counsel, he went to the DOD inspector general. He didn't get any satisfaction, and so he went to the oversight committee. You can do that, and a lot of whistleblowers do that.
You know, thinking about Tom, I've had Tom on a couple times. He went through hell.
Oh,
I mean,
terrible experience.
And I believe he's still really struggling. Do you think this whistleblower is going to go through hell? It doesn't. I mean, I wonder. I mean, if Trump has his way, he will. But
if Trump has his way, the whistleblower is going to be executed on a gallows on some military base somewhere. Of course, that's never going to happen. But if this is a legitimate whistleblower, yes, I think his career is finished. Because look at it this way. If you're a CIA manager, what's to keep you from saying, this guy ratted out the president of the United States? What's to keep him from ratting out me or us as an organization? You know, he doesn't like a conversation that the president has with Ukraine right now. What if he doesn't like the rendition program tomorrow? What if he doesn't like, something akin to a torture program? What if he doesn't like hacking into the Senate Intelligence Committee's computer systems? Whatever the issue happens to be, can they trust this guy? They told me that one of my problems was I couldn't keep my big mouth shut when I went public with the torture program. Is that what they're going to say about this guy?
But wait a second. You just a couple minutes ago premised that maybe this was a committee project and that other people were involved.
Going back even earlier, this is what I was saying. We don't know. Is this a legitimate whistleblower? Is this a whistleblowing by committee? Or is this a CIA operation against the president? We truly don't know.
Now, if it's whistleblowing by committee or a CIA operation against the president, he's probably not going to be in much trouble.
Correct.
Unless I'm sure they've got lots of black funds available so they could pay him off for the rest of his life. And
oh no, but they don't do that kind of thing. What I could see them doing is, my guess is, if he's already served at the White House, he's either a GS-15 or he's an SIS-1, Senior Intelligence Service 1. So he probably already has the time in for retirement. But what they can do is what they do to so many people as a reward for a good long career is you make him a scholar in residence at whatever college or university he graduated from. And you let him do 2, 3, 4 years there. Then he takes the full pension and he goes away quietly. They do that all the time.
Okay, but so let's take a step back now. And Trump is trying to destroy this guy, and his backers and supporters are.
Yes.
And some people on the left are too. Like, yes. I think Caitlin Johnstone is basically pretty negative about him.
Yes.
What effect does that have on other whistleblowers? I mean, I've been involved in the whistleblower community for over 10 years now, and it's hard enough for somebody to make a decision to do what it takes to be a whistleblower, which generally means destroy your life, lose your job, maybe go into debt for $1 million or more, as you did.
You're looking at it.
Yeah. So what if, all this media attention on this whistleblower, is it going to intimidate? Is it going to scare off whistleblowers? We desperately need whistleblowers.
Absolutely. I agree with you on all those points. Scott Shane at the New York Times said that on the day of my arrest, every one of the New York Times national security sources went silent. And that's exactly what the goal is in 99% of these whistleblower cases. That's why the prosecutions are so difficult. Difficult for the whistleblower, because the point isn't even necessarily to have you sentenced to a long stretch in prison. The point is to ruin you so that it acts as a deterrent for other people who might be thinking of blowing the whistle. I can't tell you how many people, former CIA people, have told me that, they thought about reporting on X, Y, and Z, but then they saw what happened to me. $1 million in debt, my wife takes off, I lose my house, I lose my job, I lose my clearance. I'll never work in government or national security again. It's taken me all these years to get back on my feet. Nobody wants to live like that. They actively ruin you. That's all. That's a part of the program. Nobody wants that.
So is there anything that can be done to flip this around so that this whistleblower's report and the response to it can actually encourage whistleblowers?
Well, it's kind of hard to say with a president who likes to just throw grenades into the middle of the room. I will say that, again, I'm going to preface it. If this is a legitimate whistleblower, the CIA did the right thing in reporting the information. ODNI did not do the right thing by sending the information to the Justice Department. It should have just sent it directly to the Oversight Committee. And the president should have kept his big mouth shut. So the MO for reporting this kind of thing actually didn't work in this case. And it didn't work because both ODNI and the White House decided that they didn't want it to work. For the system to work, it has to go exactly the way that the law calls for it to go. Otherwise, there aren't going to be whistleblowers because people aren't going to want to take the risk.
So when the ODNI violated the law and went to the DOJ instead of Congress, are there consequences for that?
No. The acting DNI said that this was unprecedented territory, which is true. And this is one of those laws in the books that will never be prosecuted, just like overclassification is actually a felony. And it's never, ever been prosecuted, nor will it ever be. So no, it's one of those things that's just going to be ignored and lost in the greater context of this case.
What would you expect to see happen as this story unfolds in terms of the whistleblower?
The whistleblower, I think, is going to have to testify at some point. And I would bet my next paycheck that it would be in a classified venue, in a closed session. That's the only way to get the information, all of the information, all of the background, including what led to the writing of the report in the first place, on the record. With that said, the Republicans are extraordinarily hostile to this whistleblower, and I wouldn't be surprised if the whistleblower's identity is leaked.
That's what I would think.
If it's leaked, then we move on to an entirely different plane. When I went public on torture in December of 2007, I got literally hundreds of pieces of hate mail and hate email. But the FBI called me one day and said that they had what they described as 3 credible threats on my life. And one of them actually mentioned my children and my address. And so they urged me to leave town. So I took my family to Cancun for a week. And the FBI called and said that they had taken care of everything, that they had interviewed these people. They were just, local lunatics, and there was no real threat. We came back. Well, we're in a far, far more politically charged environment now than we were in 2007. And if this guy's identity is revealed, you know how many pro-Trump nuts there are out there? I mean, we see at campaign rallies, Trump supporters beating up journalists and beating up protesters, and the president egging them on.
I watched listened to your interview with Kevin Gostola over Shadowfax. A great interview.
Thank you.
Kevin's a great guy, former editor at Op-Ed News, by the way.
Terrific.
And you said that there's enough information already that probably people within the CIA know who he is.
In 5 minutes, you could figure it. Less than 5 minutes. There are only so many people.
Oh, wait. So it's not if we find out who he is, it's when.
Yeah. In fact, I had a call last night from a CIA friend of mine who told me the name. And I said, my God, is it out already? And he said, no, but everybody in the building figured it out. It only took but a minute. Right? The New York Times article last week that described the guy was easily enough information to identify him. It just hasn't been leaked yet. And I hope it's not leaked.
Good luck.
Yeah.
And so it's a him.
Yes.
Wow. Well, I'm dying of curiosity, but I don't want to mess up his life any more than he's got in store for him.
This was a major decision that he took to do this. I mean, he had to have known the risks before he went into it, because there's precedent. I'm sure he saw what happened to Tom Drake and Bill Binney and Chelsea Manning and Ed Snowden and me. And, you know, I spoke with an Israeli journalist years ago who wrote a book. It was a psychological profile of 4 20th century whistleblowers. And he came to 2 conclusions that were fascinating to me. One was that whistleblowers have a far more highly developed sense of right and wrong than the general population, right? Very clearly defined sense of right and wrong. The other thing is that whistleblowers never make a financial comeback. They believe in their hearts they do the right thing, but then they're ruined financially and they never recover from it.
I would say that's true for government whistleblowers. I mean, there are some whistleblowers in corporations, for example, where they can get rewards actually for percentages of damages and things like that.
Yeah, that's thanks to the Whistleblower Protection Act. Yes.
Yeah. Now, Chuck Grassley has added his words. What's your take on what he had to say?
You know, you can count the number of pro whistleblower members of Congress on one finger, and that is Chuck Grassley, the senior senator from Iowa. Grassley was the author of the Whistleblower Protection Act. He was the author of the National Security Whistleblower Protection Act. He speaks every year at the National Whistleblower Center's annual luncheon. He's the only guy that's serious about protecting whistleblowers. And you can't keep people safe with the support of one member of Congress.
Well, I mean, I know I've been to a number of these luncheons and events, and he's not the only one, but they're very rare.
You know, there are 1 or 2 junior members of Congress, I suppose, of the House. But in terms of legislative authority, only Grassley can push some of these things through the system and get them signed into law. And that's why we have these whistleblower protection laws. Thanks.
And what he did was he made an announcement getting behind this whistleblower, basically.
Yes, he did. I mean, he had to. It's his law. The whistleblower invoked his law to protect himself. So Grassley was sort of pushed into it. Now, Grassley is not a member of the Intelligence Committee, so Grassley doesn't have the answers to the questions that we're asking as to whether or not this is a legitimate whistleblower. He just has to sort of go with it until proven otherwise.
Okay, so I want to continue on the line of questioning that I had with you about what's going to happen with this guy. You started off by telling us about what happened with you and that it'll be worse with him in terms of threats.
Oh, I think so.
What else? What's going to happen to him in terms of the media, in terms of government, in terms of other?
In terms of government, I think he's going to be okay because he did what the law called for him to do. He went through the chain of command. He's not going to lose his pension. He's not going to get fired from his job. If he's outed, he's going to have some personal problems, but I don't think he'll have professional problems. With that said, as I noted earlier, there are going to be people inside the CIA that are going to question whether or not to trust him because he ratted out the president of the United States. And otherwise, you know, the path of the whistleblower is a very, very lonely one. Like I said, many of us have gone bankrupt. Many of us have lost our families. We've lost our pensions. We lost our security clearances. We lost our ability to work in government. And that's with or without convictions. That's just by virtue of the fact that you went public in the first place. So I think that he desperately would want to see this remain within the chain of command and within the Intelligence Committee, the Oversight Committee, and that his identity never be exposed.
You know, when you talk about it remaining within the chain of command, that just doesn't feel like the regular whistleblower process, though.
Not at all. It doesn't at all feel like the whistleblower process. People ask me all the time why I didn't go through the chain of command. They asked me this on MSNBC just the other night. And the answer is an easy one. You know, on torture, my chain of command created the torture program. My chain of command implemented the torture program. Oh, why didn't you go to the oversight committee? Because the oversight committees approved of the torture program and then financed it. So my only alternative was to go to the media. So
Okay.
sometimes it's just impossible to go through the chain of command.
Now, you've speculated that he's probably a GS-15 or an SIS-1
Yes.
because of his placement.
Yes.
Tell me more about what kind of CIA operative or agent gets placed in the White House. What are the criteria? What is the experience? What is the job there?
Good question. So the National Security Council has several slots in every geographic area that are reserved for CIA analysts. They also have several slots reserved for high-performing State Department Foreign Service officers. And it's because the NSC is both a policy and an intelligence organ. And so if you are a respected, high-performing GS-14 or GS-15, you go to the White House for 2 years. You might be able to extend it to 3 years, and you generally come back to a promotion. And that promotion would be to GS-15 or to the Senior Intelligence Service, SIS Level 1. It's a job that many, many analysts aspire to. And to make the Senior Intelligence Service, the internal rule is that you have to do a rotation in another directorate and a rotation in the policy community. So this is the policy rotation, and it brings you into direct daily contact with the National Security Advisor, the Deputy National Security Advisor, and frequently with the President himself.
And what's the job there?
It's coming up with policy. It's using the CIA's analysis to better inform policy. It's the nexus, really, of intelligence and policy.
And who would this agent be working with? What other people?
Well, there are a lot of political appointees, certainly, at the NSC. But generally, he would be working with a pretty even mix of CIA, State Foreign Service, and DOD uniformed personnel.
And what kind of policy would he be working on? What would be some examples?
Foreign policy. I mean, it's as simple as that. Everyone has his own unique foreign policy, and you gotta come up with it and come up with intelligence to support it, no matter what it is.
Now we've heard that there were 20 people on that phone call, and
yeah, I don't believe that. I saw that, and I don't believe that for a minute. Usually there are 4. On rare occasions, there are 5 people on that phone call. You're going to have the Secretary of State, the National Security Advisor, the Chief of Staff, the NSC expert for whatever the issue happens to be, and maybe if it's somebody like Vladimir Putin, somebody that important, you might have the CIA director on the line as well. But, these routine calls, they take place every day, all day. And you can't have 20 people wasting their time on a call with the prime minister of XYZ country. That doesn't make any sense.
And we're told that so basically somebody else who was on the call had to inform him.
I think so. This is another thing that nobody's really discussing. These memos, they're called memcons, memoranda of conversations. They're write-ups of the call. The president said this, the prime minister said that, then the president said this, and the PM said the other thing. These are usually very tightly held, and they do not leave the NSC. So the fact that a CIA analyst had access to one of these memos tells me that somebody at the White House gave it to him. Because when I was an analyst, we never, ever had access to write-ups of the president's conversations with anybody. Those were internal NSC documents, not to leave NSC.
Okay. You told me you had to go to another.
Yes, forgive me. It starts in 3 minutes.
Any final words?
This is a story that is literally breaking by the day. It's hard to keep all the details clear, but we really need to read all these articles. We need to come to our own conclusions. Somebody's lying, and I'm wondering if it's multiple people who are lying so far. It's going to be a while before we get to the truth.
John Kiriakou, former CIA agent, whistleblower, American hero.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the show again. Appreciate
Thank
it. This is the Rob Call Bottom Up Show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.
You too.